Good day, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Joining us today, we've got Gavin Rodney, Head of Vendor and Affiliate Management in a leading credit rating agency. As part of our lockdown series, today we'll be focusing on the traits of a leader and demystifying promotion. So thank you, Gavin.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. So first question, so as a managing director and head of vendor and affiliate management, what leadership qualities have you honed to kind of reach this position?
So Vishal, I think you have to sort of like build a career over time. And so the sort of skills you'll develop will change as your career develops. And it's not like you lose some of those early skills and replace them with later skills. You know, you're building one on top of the other, sort of the foundations and then going up from there. So I think like most people, when I started the skills I were developing were what we might call hard skills. So I started as an editor in my current company. And so it was my role to understand the style guide to make sure that our articles met that style guide. We needed to understand the publishing system and which buttons to push. And I know when you and I worked closely together, you know, it was sort of similar kind of role of sort of learning how the process works and knowing how it works and gaining kind of knowledge, background knowledge, which supported you in your role. So all of those sort of hard skills are very, very important. And I think I certainly used that as a foundation, making sure that I knew as much as anybody else or tried to know as much as anybody else about those different hard skills to sort of set myself apart. And then obviously as you go through your career and you start taking on more responsibilities and including managing people, you start to sort of develop the sort of softer skills, they call them. And I think so things like you know, having difficult conversations or influencing people, these sorts of softer skills. I would certainly encourage anybody to think about not just the sort of skills they might read in a business manual or business book, but also things like sort of empathy and honesty. You know, these are the sorts of skills which, you know, we sort of like all values that we carry with us, and they aren't lost in a business sense. You don't walk through the door of a company and suddenly those things don't matter just because you don't see them very often in business books. So I would definitely encourage people to sort of like really hang on to those values because they do go a long way in your career. And I think my final point is I'd say that I sort of like the skills that I think I have used most in my career have been like what we call critical thinking and critical action. I think in the critical thinking side of it, it's really just interrogating a situation. It could be a problem or it could be an opportunity. It could be a decision that you're taking. Interrogate it by asking lots of questions about it, you know, right? It could be, does this fit in with our strategic goals? Or it could be, would my boss approve? It could be quite simple questions, but just ask a lot of questions. Don't just sort of make a decision just off the cuff and expect that it's always to be right. If you've interrogated your own decision-making, not self-doubting it, but just interrogating it, that's for me critical thinking. And then critical action is another very important skill, I think, which is around once you've decided to progress with something, you know, there might be obstacles and dependencies and things in the way, and navigating those obstacles, influencing other people to work with you, deciding what don't letting perfection stand in the way of progress, those sorts of things, you know, not dying on every single hill, you know, just knowing what's really important, what's not so important is the sort of critical or strategic action towards meeting a goal. So those are the sort of skills I would really encourage people to sort of focus on, but it's all built on a foundation of the harder skills as well.
Perfect. I really love that whole concept of critical thinking and critical action. I think I'll definitely kind of read more into that. But yeah, perfect. So secondly, so how's your journey been in progressing to the position you're at now? So I know you said you started as an editorial, but now you're kind of transforming to a new kind of role. So how did you get to A to B?
I think it's A to B to C. I've had three main roles in the company that I'm at. And when I look back at my career, I actually see three distinct waves, sort of industry waves or corporate waves, which I was lucky enough to ride without necessarily knowing it. But looking back and seeing those waves with the benefit of hindsight, I can certainly advise others to sort of be on the lookout for those types of like industry-wide waves or corporate company-wide waves that you can get onto and use that momentum to drive your career. So for me, the first one was in the early 2000s. Structured finance was an area where I was doing my editing in, and it was a big growth area in the financial markets. And without knowing it, I stepped into structured finance. And because the structured finance market grew and that area of the business in my company grew, my responsibilities grew with it. It wasn't equally, I could have stepped into a stagnant or a decreasing kind of area, and my career might have gone the other way. But I was lucky enough to step in initially into a growth area, and I made sure that I sort of stayed in that wave. The second wave was around new regulations in Europe, which hit in around 2011, and through till still going till today. But I found myself involved in implementing new regulations and that risk and control area. And again, it wasn't my speciality, but I stepped in when they needed process experts and sort of learned about risk and controls as a result of that regulatory wave. And now the third wave that I'm finding myself on is this third-party management wave, which is around the risks associated with vendors, supply chains, this sort of thing. And it's a growing area of concern for businesses, and in particular, right now with the pandemic, as supply chain risk is a hot topic. And so again, it's without necessarily realizing it, I've sort of stepped or climbed onto a wave and benefiting from that. So I'd really encourage people to look out for those waves that the company's going through or the industry's going through, and use that to drive your career.
Excellent, thank you. Third question. So what pitfalls should an individual be aware of when aiming for that next promotion?
Pitfalls. Okay, so there's two things that I would always, given myself and I'd give to anybody else. The first is about getting the right blend of patience and ambition. Okay, if you're too ambitious, then people will see you as being sort of self-serving and sort of not necessarily operating in your company's interest. Equally, if you're too patient, then your managers might see you as being sort of too comfortable and not wanting a promotion, and you might get passed up for one. So it's a really tricky balance to find. But I would really encourage people to sort of try and find that balance. Make sure that people know that you're ambitious and you are looking for promotions, you are looking for more responsibilities, but at the same time be patient and recognize that they don't immediately come along when you want them to, right? In a similar vein, I'd say one of the pitfalls is not realizing that there is a difference between personal development and promotion. Promotion is very much about, sort of new role, new responsibilities, and hopefully a better title and money that goes with it. But personal development can be done completely independently of any promotion. So it's perfectly right to be able to sort of develop your skills, develop your experience, also develop your exposure within the company that you're working with, making sure that sort of senior leaders are aware of your presence and the value that you add. And you can do all of that whilst waiting patiently for a promotion, right? And in fact, I would really encourage people to do that, because when that promotion opportunity does come along, let's say it's a new role or a new job, if you've been developing those skills in the background, then you're in a far better position than if you hadn't been developing those skills. So I would just say, get the right balance between patience and ambition, and continue to develop your skills even in the absence of an immediate promotion opportunity.
Perfect. So fourth question, what advice can you give to those who are still climbing the career ladder, and especially in the current situation like we're facing today? So what can you explain more in that kind of terms?
Yeah, look, I mean, with the current pandemic, I mean, we are entering into a recession. Of that, there is very little doubt. The open question that economists are facing, and frankly no one has the answer to, is just exactly how long is this recession going to last? Is it going to be a long, prolonged depression, or leading into a depression, or is it going to be sort of V-shaped where it bounces back as quickly as it went down? And what are the longer term impacts from the virus? So these are uncertain times, and it is also makes finding sort of promotions and other opportunities that little bit more difficult, because all of a sudden, rather than a promotion being just around the corner, people might even be worried about redundancy within their role. So I think that is troubling and difficult times for people. My advice would be to try and make yourself indispensable in these environments. Ask yourself, what is going to help your company get through this, because it's the individuals and the company as a whole. need to get through this. We will come through this. Companies and countries have survived recessions in the past. And you need to come through that. The question is just, what can your contribution be to that? And if you are putting yourself out there as supporting the company through these difficult times, then whilst there are no guarantees, at least you're putting yourself in the best position to protect your role. And if you're lucky and your company is somewhat recession proof, then sure, there'll still be promotion opportunities there.
Perfect. And last question, it kind of links very much to your kind of answer, is in today's world, how important is that leadership quality, and what quality should one develop if they want to become that leader?
I think my number one advice here is that the concept of a cigar chomping leader who's all powerful at the top of a corporation and the only one who's allowed to make decisions, and everybody looks to that leader for direction and is incapable of making a decision by themselves, incapable of exhibiting leadership behaviors. That model is long gone. Very much the model that's in place now is in businesses is an expectation that anybody in an organization at any level can display leadership behavior. Okay. Now there is still going to be a need for sort of top bosses to make the really difficult decisions, and that's what they get sort of paid and remunerated to do. But at every level of the organization, we can all exhibit certain sort of like behaviors, which are leadership behaviors, right? So how well are you treating your colleagues? How timely are you pitching up to meetings? How quickly are you responding to a sales inquiry or a customer query, right? All of those sort of behaviors are exhibiting leadership behaviors. And if you amalgamate all the leadership behaviors in an organization and have people who are willing to exhibit those behaviors, then obviously the company does much better than if everybody's sitting around like lemmings waiting for some sort of top dog to tell them what to do. So my advice is to sort of not equate leadership with seniority, but see leadership as a set of behaviors that we can all exhibit. And naturally enough, if you take that approach and look online for leadership behaviors, that there'll be plenty of kind of advice that people can give on what type of behaviors to exhibit, but most of them are pretty intuitive and obvious. And if you're exhibiting those behaviors, you are far more likely to get noticed for that next promotion than if you are more on the lemming side of the scale, waiting passively for direction.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Gavin. That was a really insightful interview, and hopefully we can see you next time as well.
It's an absolute pleasure, Vishal. Nice seeing you again.